created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
Of course, he is now taken as the villain, but he was more than just a villain in this story. So, we're in 1951, and what happens in 1950? In the 1950, please remember that we had the chance of witnessing the versatility of Maria being able to sing. She didn't know back then what was going to become one of her iconic roles. Of course, I am referring to Norma. She would go for a Trovatore, which was never one of her favorite or preferred roles, and that we are not very convinced of on how she did it. Not bad, but still not the Callas that we would know later. Remember that as we are traveling back in time to the 1951, it is not only that she's still Maria Meneghini, it is also that she's on the path, on the way of perfecting her art. We can see many times, and we will witness that today again, that she's on her path of building what would later be known as her artistry. But now she's not there yet. She's on her way, but she's not there yet. From that also previous year, we know she was very well received. There was lots of hype around her arrival. That huge announcement at the entrance of the Palacio de Bellas Artes announcing La Soprano Assoluta del Siglo, the absolute soprano of the century. We learned that she also sang Tosca. We mentioned already Il Trovatore, we mentioned Norma, we learned about her Tosca, and she also sang Aida. We will stop there in Aida because Aida is the first performance that we are attending this year 1951. And we are attending her Aida because we know as time travelers that her performance from the 1950 with that huge E-flat was spectacular. And remember that news don't travel that fast in the 1950s, so there's a few people who know about the problems she had with the tenor back then, Kurt Baum. That also explains why in this 1951 she is having as Radames in the cast one of the greatest, hugest voices of the history of opera ever. Of course, we are referring to Mario del Monaco, who is now going to be Radames. And of course, the voice of Mario del Monaco. Mario del Monaco's voice is absolutely immense. It's super powerful. It has this beautiful clarity, brightness that Italian voices have. So not only he has powerful volume, powerful high notes, but also he has this attractive bright color in his voice that make him a legend. So this huge voice is going to be partnering with Maria Meneghini on stage. And of course, people in Mexico know from the previous year that Maria Meneghini has reached that huge E-flat. And people, if you recall our travel to the 1950s, it was a surprise. The moment in the concertante at the end of the second act, when she, after the complete scene of the return of the maybe we should put it in context. Remember that there is a war between the two sides, the Ethiopians and the Egyptians, and so Radames is on the side of the Egyptians, and Aida is on the other side. Things will not go happily for her and her. I just don't want to use the word country, because countries as we know them is political and ideological, very recent version. So if we take it as we should, the truth is that there were not countries as we know them now. So what was chosen to be called Ethiopia back then and what was chosen to be called Egypt back then is what the two sides are facing. So there is this enormous festivity, and because the Egyptians have won, and there is what the huge scene that is called the concertante. And I am calling your attention to the concertante because you came back this 1951 to witness, because since you're a time traveler, you know that she actually sang that E flat again. But if you are a person who lived in 1951, you have the expectation of the E flat, and maybe you witnessed it the year before, but you don't know if she's actually going to repeat it. So even if you know, or even if you were present, you could hear it, but you cannot claim for sure that she's going to sing it again. We all, time travelers, know she did. And you know that since the very moment that the opera starts, you listen to the tremendous, huge voice of Mario del Monaco, and you know that you are witnessing again one of the versions of the opera that will remain written in the history of opera of Mexico and also acknowledged by many countries in the world as one of the most spectacular recordings ever. Pay attention and notice that I am saying spectacular. It doesn't mean that it has the best quality in artistic terms, because of course Del Monaco is exceeding all the time, because of course he will not cede to now the Maria Meneghini, who is 27 years old, still very young. She's a very young woman still. And Mario del Monaco, of course, will not cede to this young soprano. He knows that she did a great role when singing with Kurt Baum, but of course Kurt Baum, even though he was a prestigious tenor back then, of course Kurt Baum is not, and excuse me for this expression, is not even half as important as Mario del Monaco was. So Mario del Monaco arrives, he's there, he's showcasing his super huge voice. Maria, of course, is not going to see it because she won the applause once and she's going for that applause again. We are reaching the part where we have that concertante, and if you, time traveler, have had the chance of listening to the complete recording, you notice that there are the volume of the choir, the volume of the orchestra, the volume of the singers is super huge. When you reach that part and you listen to the male and the female voices, and as you approach the moment where you will hear actually that expected E flat that is going to last around 5 seconds, Maria Meneghini will be able to sustain, after that huge power that we mentioned of the choir and the orchestra, and as we are reaching that moment, and with time travelers, you know that she will be able to reach that note for around 5 seconds, but people in the audience do not know it. So by the time we are expecting to hear it and the time we know that it's going to be like that, it sounds like this. Of course, it's a much more spectacular note than it was the previous year. Maria had the chance of preparing it. Maria has been thinking about it very, very serious. And of course, Mario del Monaco is not very pleased to see the huge applause, because listen in the background. Listen how people really, really get mad, and we are among them. We are part of this episode, of this part of history in Mexico, where we are witnessing how people really, really lost controlled and are just exploding. There is a moment, you could hear it yourselves, where the sound of the applause is so huge that the orchestra is barely heard. Because, yes, again, Maria Meneghini Callas did it again. She reached that powerful E flat with all the strength of her voice. There are some recordings, we know, time travelers, that keep part of the original sound that was a radio transmission, and you can hear the host of the program, the one who is transmitting on radio, how he's also impacted by the frenzy that has exploded now in the Palacio de Bellas Artes. We will go back to those radio transmissions because that's going to be 9:52. Of course, we are traveling back to 1952. But now in 1951, and if you know some of those recordings, and you notice, because we are at the Palacio de Bellas Artes, and we notice there is a track with the logos of the local radio announcing, and we are aware that year that was broadcasted through radio. I insist, on year 1952, we will pay more attention to the importance on why is that important to mention that it was transmitted or broadcasted in the radio. But for the moment, it is full ecstasies. Now, of course, we are in the recess between acts. We are waiting for the next act to commence. And all you hear in the corridors, all you hear from people also attending is this wow, this sensation of, man, what have we heard? And even though we have paid attention to the huge E flat by Maria Callas, we also noticed that prior to this, both Carlos del Mónaco, the great Oralia Dominguez, that we will talk about her in a second, and of course Maria Meneghini herself, are singing out loud. This is a sort of a contest where no singer is willing to sing. Mario del Mónaco will not sing, Maria Meneghini will not sing, and it's still unknown to many, Oralia Dominguez, the Mexican contralto, who is now part of the cast, because this year we could not see Julieta Simeonato. Julieta Simeonato is not with us this year, but in her place is attending Oralia Dominguez, who would later build a tremendous career in Europe. Of course, people learned about, you just have to listen to the recording, or as we are doing now, to listen to her voice now live and acknowledge that she's a tremendous artist. So we know that Oralia Dominguez would years later be part of the recordings and casts with all the greatest singers of those years in Europe. And we'll listen as we are reaching the scene by Radames. Many people do not pay attention to that part in Radames. I would invite you, time travelers, to go back to our seasons in the Parlons de, go to the recording of Mexico City in 1951, where I provide lots of details on the recording that we are just mentioning, a few comments today. But go back to that one, which unfortunately would not be captured in better audio quality. But the advantage is that I provide lots of details of many of the passages of the singers. And going back to this 1951, we are now witnessing a Mario del Mónaco who is singing her scene, her final scene, after he has revealed the war secret and being discovered by Amneris and the Supreme Priests, where he goes for his expression of Sacerdote io resto. He keeps that note for so long that it seems that's going to last forever. I am pretty sure that's the longest time a tenor has been able to sustain that note at the end of the act. Also, it is very important to mention that Mario del Monaco not only keeps the note forever, he goes or he transitions from syllables, which is very dangerous because the tenor can crack the note. Sacerdote io resto a te. He pronounces each and every one of the syllables. He doesn't go for the easy way out. He doesn't go for sacerdote io resto a te and keeping the te forever. No, he keeps and he gives the right emphasis to each of the phrases. That is spectacularly amazing. We cannot be happier than we are now for having traveled to year 1951. Del Monaco, a much better tenor than Kurt Baum. And even though he's competing with La Callas, we don't see that negative energy, if you allow me the expression, between Baum and Maria Meneghini. No. There is now positive competition between the two singers. And going back now that we have mentioned the most incredible moment in the opera by the tenor, by Radamés Mario del Monaco, we go for the following scene, which now is going to be Maestra Oralia Dominguez, which now has the very complicated, very difficult, very challenging, that retour de force that Amneris has to sing. And Maestra Oralia Dominguez does it to perfection. Of course, Giulietta Simeonato did it great, but man, what we are witnessing in the voice of Oralia Dominguez is just out of this world as well. She has just faced the tremendous, huge voice of Mario del Monaco in that scene where she's suggesting that he renounces to Aida and that she can claim for mercy for him, and he says he's not going to accept it. And we see this confrontation of voices between the two voices where Oralia Dominguez does not see a single syllable or note facing Mario del Monaco. There were not many voices who would dare to do that, and Oralia Dominguez, a very young singer, also in her 20s back then, is willing to pursue fame and is giving everything on stage. She will continue with her complete scene after that confrontation with the huge voice of Mario del Monaco, and as she hears how the judgment scene and putting all the emotion in the passages where she has to sing Allo salvate no mi pietà, no mi pietà. Those low, powerful notes with that pasta that Oralia Dominguez have just, we are unable to rest on our seats. What we are seeing is irrepeatable. Never later will you be able to listen to such an impressive performance, live performance of the opera, because no later would we have the powerful voice of Maria Meneghini in those early 1950s, along with the very powerful voice of Mario del Monaco and Giulietta Simeonato or Oralia Dominguez. That would never ever be repeated again. And we understand that. And so we leave the Palacio de Bellas Artes after having witnessed the most amazing Aida ever. We as time travelers, we know that will never happen again. People living those years did not know it. But I have also to mention something before we jump to La Traviata, because that this year, 1951, is very different. Last year, we witnessed Maria performing 4 very different roles, which portray the capacity, the malleability of hers of singing from bel canto, then Maestro Verdi, and then being able to sing the Verismo of Maestro Puccini. That was what Maria proved in the 1950. But in 1951, in terms of roles, she only sings 2. This Aida, Maestro Verdi, and then what would be known as another one of her iconic roles. Of course, we are referring to La Traviata, but please allow me to make a pause because we, again, time travelers that have information at hand that many people do not know, we learn, or people in the 50s learned later, many weeks or months later, that the casting from the 1950 for Tosca had a change in the role of the baritone because Maria had a problem with the baritone back then. The baritone back then that had been arranged for the role had been Leonard Warren, which of course you know because Leonard Warren is one of the most important baritones, American baritones. And Warren has a problem with Maria Meneghini, so he quits, he leaves. And that is why there is another version, there is another performance where Ivan Petrov is taking the role of Count de Luna. But why am I mentioning it now? Remember, in the 1950s, we were unable to know it. We are at advantage because we are time travelers. So in 1951, we can talk about it because people from the 50s know it now. Maria would later be known, and that's part of the gossiping of her life, for having confrontations and having problems with several singers. Kurt Baum and Leonard Warren are two examples of the very first intricate problems that she had with other singers. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be the last time. That would happen to her more than often. So at some point that is gossiping, but at some point that is also true. Kurt Baum is not in 1951 with us because of the problems she had with Maria. He promised never to sing with her again. Yeah, that was not kept, but she promised that he would never sing with Maria again. And Leonard Warren did the same. He said he would never sing with Maria again. With time, as we are time travelers, we know that this would turn against her, because when she later would not have her voice with her, there were orchestra directors and singers who didn't wish to be part of her artistic career any longer. That's why we are mentioning it now. But it's time to go for the role that I was telling that would later be one of her iconic roles as well, and we are going for La Traviata. The Traviata that Maria performed in Mexico is not her first Traviata. It's her first in Latin America, but her first was actually in Italy. The first time she sang La Traviata was in Italy. So she liked it and she chose to do it again. She enjoyed the role for Mexico. But pay attention to this because this is very important. We noticed in Il Trovatore that Maria's voice was way too heavy for the role, and with Traviata it happens the same. At some points we are uncertain on whether we are listening to Violetta Valery singing her ornaments at the end of Sempre Libera, or if we are listening to Lady Macbeth. And Maria is aware of it. Maria knows that her voice is very heavy for many roles, even though she's working or trying to make it sound later, still her voice is way too powerful. So if you had listened to her V, this time a D flat, a Re flat, she sings at the end of the Sempre Libera, you know that it is like if not like a canyon, it's like a laser beam. It's so powerful that it cuts throughout all the air, and we are witnessing it now. We are at the Palacio de Bellas Artes and we listen to her very powerful Violetta Valery, and even though it is impressive, we still feel that this is not the refinement and this is not the sound that we expect from Violetta. Because we people in Mexico, and the people who are in the 1950s with us, have witnessed La Traviata a good number of times with a good number of very good singers. So we like the quality and the power of the voice, but we feel that she is still not there. By no means I am saying that it is a bad recording or a bad performance that we can witness now. We can look for that in YouTube now. No, that is not what I am saying. But still, her 1951 Traviata is still far from what Maria Meneghini would accomplish later. So as we witness it in the Palacio de Bellas Artes, we like it. But we are sincere, Maria is not there yet. Memorable recording, of course it is, what we are witnessing. And I would like to mention the role of Cesare Valletti, that if you have listened, as a time traveler, you have listened to the recording, or now that you're witnessing it now with us in the 1951, you notice that tenor Cesare Valletti is a very light voice. Maria comes from singing with Mario del Monaco, comes from singing with Kurt Baum. Why is she singing with such a light tenor? Remember that La Traviata is for the soprano. Really, even though there is a tenor and there is a Giorgio Germont, truly is that all the attention is paid to the main role that happens to be Violetta Valery. So there are no top tenor at that time would choose to be secondary to a woman who was still building her career. That explains why Cesare Valletti is there. Also, this is the first time that we listen in Mexico to Maria singing with, if you allow me the expression, I don't mean to be offensive, with such a minor voice as Cesare's is. We have noticed that he has a very good musicality, that he's a very good tenor, but the size of his voice is nothing compared to the size of the voice of Maria or Kurt Baum's or Mario del Monaco. So in a way, she's singing it with a minor tenor, and remember that even though she's invited, she's not the greatest opera star that will come years later. So she's still not in the position of dictating who she's going to sing with or not. She will do it later. We time travelers know it. In the future, she would choose to dictate many things. But now, she is not able to do that. And so, what are our main takeaways from what we are witnessing in La Traviata? To be sincere, not much, except for understanding that Maria is working on that role, insist, a role that will be one of her iconic roles in ways that it was Norma, but we see a very committed artist in building her understanding of the role. If you ask me, did we like what we witnessed? Yes, we did. Because we notice the commitment. We notice how she's working hard on building that second act along with the baritone. She's really working very hard in understanding all the nuances that the role has. But she is not there. We don't know it. Remember that we have traveled in time. People who are in the 50s don't know that Traviata will be one of her iconic roles. But we live with what we have, and what we have witnessed, it's good. Truth is that it is good. It is not perfect, but it is good. So we leave that session from La Traviata with some sort of mixed emotions. We are so impressed with Aida. We liked La Traviata, but we feel like something is missing. Maria is coming this 1951 for singing only in 7 performances in total. We feel that something happened, and we have looked in the in books and everywhere, and there is no reason, there is no explanation as to why the year 1951 is, if you allow me the expression, pale comparing the amount of titles that she sang. Situation will change in the 1952s, but we know it that because we are time travelers. People who live in the 1950s don't know what is going to happen next year. But now that we have mentioned what is going to happen in the future, let's talk a little about the future. We advantages time travelers. We know that that same year, 1951, Maria will face one of the crises that will come more often as she starts to lose her voice. She will have a crisis when she runs her presentations in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil, in September that same year, 1951, which puts her in very, very bad terms with the local opera house. That is a second sign of what will also happen to her career later. We time travelers know that she will fall, she will have difficult struggles with the Metropolitan Opera House, then led by Rudolf Bing, and she will also have problems with Opera La Scala as well. So why am I mentioning it now? Because those early years in Mexico, those 1950s, give us a hint of what is going to be part of her career later in the gossiping that people will like to build. Her differences of opinions, her problems with other singers that we refer to with Warren and Baum, 1950, and 1951, where we witnessed her first vocal crisis that would jeopardize her relationship with an opera house, which will repeat itself years later with La Scala and the Met. Of course, there are you can always choose what size to you would favor when you understand what are the details of the opera house in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, and what was the physical condition that Maria was suffering. But truth is that this is not going to be the first, and this is not going to be the last time that Maria has problem with all her colleagues, and unfortunately not the first and not the last time that she's going to be having problems with another opera house. A last thing that I would like to mention, as we are time travelers, unless you are a musicologue, you are a music specialist, and you are a biographer or anything like that, if you're just a person who enjoys opera, as most of us are, you will have a very hard time trying to figure out the dates. And even now, with time travelers, have trouble in understanding what the true dates are. Because depending on what source you choose, you will find contradicting dates of the recordings. Even for CDs that were published in the early 2000s, you will notice that there are differences either in the casting, or either on the date. And if you go to YouTube, things get worse. The information seems not to be clear, but since we are not anthropologues of music, we will refrain to the information to what we have at hand. If you want something more specific, I would advise you to go to books that refer to the biography of Maria, because we, common people, have lots of trouble in understanding what happened years later when one is unable to date the performances safely. We are reaching the end of this very short trip to the 1951, where we saw Maria singing, repeating, and being part of one of the most incredible Aidas ever recorded. And we witnessed, as for the Latin American market, the birth of one of her iconic roles, still referring to La Traviata.
You can follow our channel for the latest updates and more content. Opera We Love Singing, in just one word. Link in the description of the episode.